And joining me now, Congressman Stephen Horsford, chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, who was also at that White House meeting, Cornell Belcher, MSNBC political analyst, pollster, and Democratic strategist, and LaTosha Brown, co-founder of Black Voters Matter. Thank you all very much for coming to the Sunday Show. Congressman Horsford, you also attended that White House meeting. What more can you share about what was discussed?
Well, look, thank you for having me on, Jonathan. I think the Chairman Harrison laid it out well. Look, the Black voters are the base of the Democratic Party, and we are the voters that secured the historic win for President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. So it's imperative that the party, the president, this government, and the private sector included do what they need to do to ensure that Black voices are heard in the federal government, on Capitol Hill, and in the boardrooms. And that's something the Congressional Black Caucus is working on every single day because we understand that Black lives matter, and so do our voices when it comes to our democracy.
Mm-hmm. All right, Cornell, you are the pollster, and you pointed out on Twitter that there is a false narrative being pushed by the media that Black men are embracing Trumpism. I find that hard to believe. Explain.
Why do you find it hard to believe? It's in the data, right? If you look at over the last 4 decades, Black men voting pattern has been fairly consistent, right? Going back to '76, you've got 14% of African Americans African American men who vote Republican. And if you look at the validated research of voting that Pew does, look, in 2022, 6% of African American men voted Republican. So I think there's a lot of hay being made about some data from polls that are actually not representative. But I've also seen this before. So I'm always suspect of why you're trying to drive a wedge between Black men and trying to set Black men up as scapegoats. When you look at actual voting, not the polls, but actual voting, there is only a 7% difference between how Black men vote and Black women vote. It is the narrowest difference between any of the major demographic groups. So the pick on Black men, like Black men are just dramatically different than Black women, is a false narrative. Now, let me lean into what the chairman had to say, right? And the truth of the matter is, Congressman, Chairman Stephen Horsford, they have fought and pass a lot of great legislation that impact African Americans, particularly African American men. The problem is, Capehart, is when I sit in focus groups, the African Americans, particularly African American men, they have no idea. They have no idea that criminal justice reform was passed. They have no idea that voting rights was passed, and they fought so hard for it. And to your question that you gave, the chairman, DNC chairman, is what I would say is that not only must you say that we fought to get these things passed, Black men, you have to use your power to actually punish those who are standing in the way of getting these things passed. It's a messaging and a resource conversation, and I would argue that we have not spent enough resources actually messaging specifically to African Americans, particularly African American men.
And I just want to be clear. When I said I didn't believe it, I didn't believe that Black men would support Trumpism. I'm with you. I'm with you on that, Cornell. Please, internets, don't at me, just to be clear. Now, LaTosha, you are in it. In Black Voters Matter, you are in it. You are in the community. You are talking to folks. You are hearing from them. Why is there this big drop from the 87% of Black vote that the president got in 2020 to seeing 62% in that Morning Consult Bloomberg poll? Is it a real thing that the president's hold on Black voters is slipping?
I think Biden has a burden that's bigger than Biden. And what I mean by that is that Black voters, when I'm talking to Black people, they're very concerned about the environment. It's not just in what has been passed. People are saying, what are you going to do for me now? In addition to that, there's a lot of, when we know that a lot of young voters and first-time voters engaged in the process because they wanted to see criminal justice reform. That simply has not happened. We also knew that a lot of people that we talked to were interested in voting rights. and making sure voting rights legislation was passed. That hasn't happened. In addition to that, that there has to be the metrics. I think there's a disconnect in terms of the metrics in which sometimes the party uses as a metric of success and how people see success. So while there is a low unemployment rate, there's a lot of economic anxiety among Black voters that I'm talking to that are interested in literally what does this mean economically in this kind of environment where they're seeing the rise of racism, when they're seeing the destruction of affirmative action and those kind of programs, that leads a certain level of uncertainty of what our economic future is.
You know, LaTosha, let me stick with you before we go to a break. You know, President Biden's mantra, and I think it's a terrific mantra, don't compare me to the almighty, compare me to the alternative. But if that alternative is Trump or any Republican, given all the things that haven't happened from the Black voters' perspective, is there any way that those voters would either vote for the Republican, or is the bigger danger they stay home?
You know, I think the biggest danger is staying home. I think that Black voters are actually more sophisticated than the media likes to give us credit for, that we're very pragmatic voters. And so at the end of the day, will there be a run to Trump? Absolutely not. I think what we'll see is people be so discontented with the process that they're so frustrated that they'll disengage. And so that's the bigger issue. And I think there are three things that we've got to do. One, it has to be more money. You have to make sure that they have a message. And I think I agree with Cornel exactly, that there has to be a message that's tailored directly to certain constituency groups. And that you have to make sure that you're lifting up, you have your messengers who is actually giving the message. When we're looking at television ads, that's not going to get it. That is not where a lot of people in the communities that we're talking to get their news from, or actually get the newest information around what Biden has done. And I think that those are going to be the three things that he's going to have to do going forward to get the bill to support that.
All right, everybody, don't go anywhere. We are going to continue this conversation with Congressman Stephen Horsford, Cornel Belcher, and LaTosha Brown after the break.